Start off with a little bit of philosophy. Once upon a time there was a rabbi. And whenever he wanted God's presence, the rabbi went to a special place in the woods. And he would light a fire and say some prayers, and he did a little dance. And then God would appear to him. And when he died, his disciple did the same. If he wanted God's presence, he went to the same spot in the woods. He also lit a fire, and he also said some prayers. But he hadn't been taught to dance. It still worked. God appeared to him. And when he died, his disciple carried on the tradition. If he wanted God's presence, he went to the same spot in the woods, lit the fire, but he didn't know the prayers and he didn't know the dance. It still worked, Lord, because God came. And then he died. And he also had a disciple. And whenever he wanted God's presence, he went to the same place in the woods. But nobody had taught him the prayers, how to light the fire, or even dance. But it still worked. God appeared. In the end, he also died. He too had a pupil. And one day this pupil wanted to be in God's presence. So he searched for the place in the woods. Couldn't find it. Didn't know how to light the fire. Didn't know the prayers. And he didn't know the dance. All he knew was how to tell the story. But it worked. He discovered that whenever he told the story of how the others had found God, God would appear. In essence, the story explains to us how sacred ritual, liturgy, all of that works. In Judaism, this is called making zikaron. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Christians call it making memorial. The idea is that a past event can be remembered, can be ritually recalled in such a way that it becomes present again and again, and it can be participated in. We often ask ourselves, how is this possible? Because we have no models for this in physics or metaphysics or psychology to understand this. It's beyond really phenomenology. The ritual is probably best understood, and this makes sense for us, I think, through metaphor, through story, and as what the tale just told to us. God appears whenever certain stories get told. We recall that Moses instructed people to remember how their God worked great wonders for them, brought them together, led them through the desert, fed them with bread from heaven, freed them from slavery, and guided them through these vast and for them dangerous lands. So it is that Christians refer to themselves as the New Israel. And we say, what has brought us together? What has been our journey? What has led us through the desert and given us food and drink? What liberates us? And these, for us, are the questions of our unity. That's part of our history, our sustenance. That's part of the common faith that holds us together. There's a lot of celebration of diversity these days, and it goes through communities from Toronto to Vancouver, from Beirut to Beijing. And it's what keeps us together, the cohesion, the unity that we get through the flesh and blood. Because if there's nothing that unifies us as followers of Christ, why do we bother, right? It's the one source. Jesus Christ is the one source of our unity. Whether it's in North America or Europe or Asia or whatever. Whether the person's liberal or conservative. Whether a saint, a modernist or a traditionalist. It doesn't worry about pigmentation, skin pigmentation, the color of your skin. Whether you're male or female, papist or evangelical, it's just Christ. That's the unifying characteristic. I am the living bread come down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread shall live forever. The bread I give is my flesh for the life of the world. And we know that for us as Christians, there is no life in following Christ if we don't live our lives through Christ. And through that memorial that we do here every Sunday, we are doing what the Israelis of old called the Zikaron, telling the ritual story of Jesus' sacrifice. We do that each Sunday in our community. St. Augustine, and I don't often quote St. Augustine, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of him, but I do like this. When he was giving Eucharist to a communicant, he would often say, instead of saying the body of Christ, he would say, receive what you are. Think of that. Receive what you are. You are a follower of Christ. You are receiving Christ. This is where I go on and on. Each Sunday, we, as a community, we gather together. We form our circle, and we welcome everyone to the table. We always make a point of saying that, because Jesus welcomed everyone to the table. So I don't stand up here, or no one in our group comes forward and says, don't give communion to, I don't know, pick a person. Don't give communion to that guy, he's wearing a, is that red, Sandy? You're wearing a colorblind. He's wearing a red shirt. There's two red shirts. We don't give communion to people wearing red shirts. We don't do that. We say to everyone, come forward. Because Jesus said, come on. He's speaking to the crowds. He doesn't go look around and say, you get out of here. Not at all. He says, come on. And the powerful words he says to us. My flesh is the true food, and my blood is the true drink. Now that's the power of communion. And one of our parishioners, I believe it might have been Lawrence, said, you know, what's important at communion for all of us at Christ's servant is, if we believe, then it's the body and blood. And that is important, because in believing that, that unifies us. That brings us together. The gathering in the circle, that brings us together. The joining like that. That's the true Spirit of Christ among us. And probably Thomas is one of the cynics. You know, the 12 apostles that Jesus had, they cover all realms of life. Right? And there had to be a cynic in the group, because there's cynics among all of us. And these 12 represent people to no end. And in fact, the close disciples represent all walks of life. So here's the cynic say, look, I'll tell you what, I will believe, and he sets up this seemingly impossible condition. You know, I can just see him saying this. Well, I tell you what, I'll believe where he's going. Wait, unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands, put my finger into the nail works, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. There. And sure enough, Jesus appears. And Thomas, poor Thomas, there he is in the midst, man. Oh, man. Thomas, come here. Right? Put your... And how Thomas must have felt. But the story is told, and you notice they say there were other things. that aren't recorded here. This one's recorded because the disciples know that part of being a Christian is questioning. And what a great leap of faith. I've used that phrase before, the great philosopher Kierkegaard. I like that. This great leap of faith to believe. And how often have we had our services here where at the end of it, at least one of you and several people have come forward, if not all of us, and have expressed to each other, wow, that was great. I really felt the Spirit. How often does that happen to us? And the philosopher Immanuel Kant says, you know what? That kind of feeling, that is what makes people feel good. And if you compare that to, if you get something materialistic, I can't really think of a great example because nothing huge. I got season's tickets to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay? Wow. I feel good. I mean, happy. But that feeling, that's a materialistic thing. That doesn't compare. It can't compare to the spiritual feeling that a person gets when something good happens to them in a spiritual way. And at the end, when Jesus appears to the disciples, that's how they feel. Because don't forget, they now have to be motivated to go out there into the community, a community which they were terrified of. That's what it says in the gospel, locked doors. In ancient times, you locked the door for one of two reasons. One, you were plotting something, or two, you were afraid. Well, they're not plotting. We know they're afraid. And so, this Spirit fills them. And they want to go out and they want to share this with everyone. And so begins the wonderful journey of Christianity. And from that, all sorts of little communities, just like ours, spring up all over. They meet in homes, or they meet, if there are too many to meet in homes, they meet in an area where they can get together, and they worship together. And they have that feeling that we often have. And that keeps them going. Because look at us. That feeling, that deep spiritual feeling, has kept us going. And it will continue to keep us going. And in fact, it's allowed us to do things, in my opinion, of a miraculous nature. Truly miraculous nature. I think the depth of prayer that comes out of this community is truly edifying. And some of the things we've done, people are alive. People are alive today because of your generosity. People are alive today because of your prayers. Now that's the Spirit. Season's tickets to the Steelers don't bring that. Or any other material thing that you can think of. Doesn't equate. So, in the week ahead, ponder that great feeling that we have when we get together as followers